So you don't say. The elder brother of Napoleon lived here in Philadelphia? Who would have known? Good afternoon, friends. Welcome back to the channel. Hitch, Hiking Yeti here once again, as we are on our way to check out the Liberty Bell today and Independence Hall. So I'm inviting you to come along with me on this little journey as we walk, because we had to park a few blocks away. So let's go do this. I've always wanted to see the real Liberty Bell. I've seen the one in Walt Disney World before in Liberty Square, but I've never seen the real Liberty Bell. So kind of excited. All right, so the park I just entered in, this is called Washington Square Park, and this place is another beautiful spot to come hang out and talk and relax. I mean, just look. Nice, right? How peaceful is this? Looks like they have like a little eternal flame. So here we have it. Has some scripture up there. Freedom is a light for which many men have died in darkness. And then you have George Washington right there. There's the eternal flame. Kind of reminds me of John F. Kennedy's grave a little bit. Then we have some other, it says, unmarked graves within this square lie thousands of unknown soldiers of Washington's army who died of wounds and sickness during the Revolutionary War. So right here is Independence Hall, and we are getting in line right now, this long line, to go check out the Liberty Bell. So we got through security, and they have like some fragments in here where they try to repair the Liberty Bell. So originally the Liberty Bell was the State House Bell, is how it was known. John Pass and Stowe. John Stowe, there you go. There's Martin Luther King Jr. 1959. Here's some x-rays of the bell. In 1975 and 2001, before the bell moved to its new homes, technicians x-rayed it for hidden flaws.
Often rung to summon members of the assembly, like Benjamin Franklin, to meetings.
The bell rings, and I must go among the brave ones and talk politics.
It also rang to inform citizens of important announcements in the State House Square. To it as,
you can help preserve the bell. Please respect its age and its symbolic importance. If you have the urge to touch the Liberty Bell, reach out and feel the actual casting of the bell's famous inscription. And so they have this like right here. It's kind of backlit, ain't it? But you can come here and actually touch it to see what it feels like. So don't touch the real one. So right back here where all those people are is where we're going next, because they are viewing the Liberty Bell as we speak. It's going to be our turn right here shortly. And here we are. We're walking around the back side of the bell. And that is it. The Liberty Bell. The real one, not the one in Disney World. This is the real one. This is pretty cool. Look at all that history. And that right up there is where it lived. Up there in the top of that steeple. Before the crack happened. Then they moved it. So right there you can see the famous crack in the Liberty Bell.
Come into the chamber, come right up to the bell. We're all sharing this space.
All right, that was pretty cool. Got to see the Liberty Bell. Very exciting. I couldn't believe how much time they gave you in there to really kind of walk all the way around it and check it out, but still very crowded. But all in all, a great experience, and it costs you nothing to do that. You just got to go through a security check, make sure you don't have nothing on you, and then you're cleared to go. And then all the history is released upon you. All right, friends, right here close to where the Liberty Bell is located, you have the President's House. As you see, they have like the window panes and the door, and you have like some chimneys. And then right over here you have the archaeological find of it, as we can see it down in there. How cool is that? So this here is kind of shows you a map of the layout of the president's house. Like you have like the main house and the president's office, the kitchen, and then you go this way to the Liberty Bell Center. So it kind of gives you a layout of it. So this area here would actually be the main house. That's why you see the windows and the fireplace and things like that. And then it goes, you know, this direction, and then you can actually see the actual ruins down there that they unearthed. So now we're crossing the street to the Independence Visitor Center. It's kind of cool, since we crossed the street, now you can see the president's house, you know, the structure of how it would have looked, or, you know, been the recreation of it way back in the 1700s. Hey, yo, Adrian, look who's here. Rocky. Come here and have your little photo op of Rocky. There's some of those Love t-shirts and figurines. And then we have some Rocky shorts and some gloves. Right here you can buy your own Declaration of Independence, and I guess sign it yourself. For $6.99. My niece just told me there's an awesome book over here that I might like to read. So let's look at it and see if we can figure out which one she was talking about. That's kind of cool. Fart Proudly. I'm thinking this is the one she wanted me to look at. Writings of Benjamin Franklin. You never read in school. Alright, so we just walked out of the Independence Visitor Center, and we still have about 30 minutes or so before our reservation time comes up for us to be able to take our tour through Independence Hall. But since I'm here, I have to do a little something special. So anybody that knows me knows I'm a huge fan of the movie National Treasure with Nicolas Cage. And in the movie, they have a clue to come to this place to get these glasses where they can read the holographic, you know, map on the back of the Declaration of Independence in a movie to supposedly figure out where this treasure they're looking for. And they actually came here to Independence Hall, and in the movie they go to the very top of the steeple up there where the Centennial Bell is, which replaced the Liberty Bell in 1876. You know, after it cracked, that was the next bell. That's the bell that's up there right now. And then they crawl out on that ledge right here at a certain time, a certain designated time in the movie. I can't remember. It's like 2:33 or something. And that steeple up there, that cross, was kind of making a shadow on that little overhang, that little this little brick area right there. And that's where the glasses were actually placed. And I know there's no real glasses up there or anything, but it's so cool to be here and get to see where they filmed that part. So I thought that was really neat. So I just kind of want to share that useless little movie filming location with you. Look at all these birds. We're all just hanging out right here close to Independence Hall. All right, it is our time. In this building met the first Supreme Court of the United States of America, 1791 to 1800. Pretty cool. So right back here we have a security check-in, and we will go inside of Independence Hall. So we are in now, made it through security. Now we gotta wait about 10 more minutes before our tour starts. So they sent us over here to the other side of the building to view some neat historic stuff. So don't really know what I'm about to see, but it's gotta be cool. So we are going to check out the west wing of the Independence Hall. So right here we have the Constitution of the United States.
Usually when nobody's here in January, they take it out.
I don't know how good you can see this because it is very low light level in here to preserve the documents, but it's still really cool to be in this room with this kind of history. I mean, that's it, man. That's the Constitution of the United States.
The what?
So we've seen a couple different places where they talk about Quakers.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Quakers, William Penn founds Pennsylvania and Philadelphia in 1681.
And on this side, on the opposite side of where the documents are, you have the signing the Constitution of the United States. It says September 17, 1787. Have a little information over here, and they had the inkstand. So that right there was pretty cool to get to see those old documents, the real documents. That's pretty awesome. They do say that they move them sometime in the winter time, you know, when it's a little slower, to I guess do little preserving with them to make sure that they're okay and everything. So I thought that was really cool. My wife made a good point that right there is so interesting and so much of our history here in the United States that, you know, I don't know if they still do it anymore, but every high school student, and I know that's a big thing, but every high school student should come here and go to Philadelphia to see some of this history of this country, and go to Washington maybe the next year and go see some of that stuff. You know, I think it would be very educational for everybody. Learning can be fun if you do fun things to learn it. So, but this right here, really, really neat. Very, very cool to walk in there and check all that out. So right here next to Washington's monument, in front of Independence Hall, we have some signage here. It says Abraham Lincoln stood here when he raised the flag on Independence Hall, February 22nd, 1861. And right there's where the Abraham Lincoln stood when he raised the flag, and then right off to the side of it we have the spot where John F. Kennedy, President of the United States, stood here when he delivered his address on the independence of nations, July 4th, 1962. So all kinds of history here in Philadelphia. And we're in, the tour begins. And it feels great in here. What a great air condition.
So good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Lauren. I'm one of the park rangers here with the National Park Service. I want to welcome you all here today to Independence Hall. We're going to be starting out here very briefly in what was the courtroom of the Pennsylvania State House. Then we'll be heading right across the hall there to the room you all came to see today, the Assembly Room, where the Declaration of Independence is adopted and signed by our Second Continental Congress. Now, many folks are a little curious when they come inside Independence Hall and they see a courtroom in here. Well, this building, the Pennsylvania State House, already had a pretty rich history before the Second Continental Congress comes knocking in 1775, needing a place to meet. William Penn had founded his colony of Pennsylvania all the way back in the 1680s. But for the first 50 years of Pennsylvania's existence, its government had no official place to meet. Members of the Colonial Assembly would simply rent out any privately owned taverns or other structures they could find here in the city of Philadelphia. It was not until 1732, the same year George Washington is born, that construction begins on our State House, which of course we know today as Independence Hall. So if you were a member of that Colonial Assembly, the legislative branch, you met just across the hall there in the Assembly Room. If you were a colonial governor of Pennsylvania, you had your office space upstairs on the second floor. And if you're a judge, this is going to be your courtroom. So you can see all three branches of government all commingling right here in the State House. Now folks, if you were on trial here in Philadelphia in the 1700s, where do you think you're going to be standing in this courtroom for that trial? You pointed to it right away, well done. The prisoner's dock. Now we don't see docks in our courtrooms today, but we might say that someone is standing trial. And this is where we get the phrase from, because you were expected to stand here in the prisoner's dock throughout the duration of your trial. Now, you were innocent until proven guilty in this courtroom, but I'm not sure how innocent any of us are going to look once we get locked up on the dock here to start our trial. But folks, the entire function of our State House here, it's all going to very rapidly change when revolution comes to Philadelphia and comes here to our colonies. It's in the year 1776 that a man named Thomas Paine publishes his pamphlet called Common Sense. And in Common Sense, Paine writes, "We have it in our power to begin the world over again." Thomas Paine recognized an ability in Americans to act. And with that ability to act came the duty to act. The duty to replace what they saw as an unjust government with a new one that could better represent them and better protect their rights. And that's what this building, Independence Hall, becomes a symbol for. We're not just recognizing that there's something wrong with the world around you, but recognizing your ability, your right, and your duty to act. So it's in the 1760s that British Parliament begins taxing these colonies. And no one expects that American colonists are going to respond with boycotts, riots, and rebellion, setting off a decade-long fight in which Parliament tries to assert its right to tax these colonies, while the colonists fire back. No taxation without representation. When a rowdy crowd up in Boston dumps 90,000 pounds of tea into Boston Harbor, well, Parliament responds with the passage of the so-called intolerable acts. Acts that these colonists view as direct violations of their rights. So in response, delegates from around our colonies gathered in Philadelphia in 1774 to discuss their grievances. They meet just one block down the road from here at Carpenter's Hall, and they call for a boycott of all British goods. We know this today as the First Continental Congress. Not much is accomplished at this first Congress, but the delegates do depart Philadelphia with a promise that if relations between Great Britain and these colonies do not improve, they promise they will meet here back in Philadelphia the following spring, 1775, for a Second Continental Congress. And folks, as we know, relations between Great Britain and these colonies most certainly do not improve. So welcome to our assembly room, everyone. This is where it all happens, where the Declaration of Independence is adopted and signed by our Second Continental Congress. Each of our 13 colonies have their own table here in the assembly room. And these two tables up front, this one was for the Secretary, Charles Thompson, and this table up here in the center of the room for the President of the Second Continental Congress, John Hancock himself, who's sitting right out there. So everyone, it is on May 10th, 1775, that our Second Continental Congress convenes right here in our assembly room. And what's on the minds of these men as they take their seats? Well, no doubt, two little towns up north in Massachusetts, Lexington and Concord, the very first battles of the Revolutionary War, where the King's troops and colonial militiamen fire upon one another. What had started out as simple protest against taxes has quickly escalated into full-blown war. And this Congress must rush to create a continental army. Now, when it comes to who should lead this army, for John Adams of Massachusetts, it's a pretty obvious choice. I have but one gentleman in my mind for that important command, John Adams declares, and that is a gentleman from Virginia. Virginia. So this is the moment where everyone in our assembly room starts to realize just who John Adams is referring to, George Washington. And what does George Washington do when he starts to feel all eyes turning in his direction? Well, according to John Adams, George Washington stands up and he runs out of the room. I want y'all to think for just a moment. Have you ever experienced a time where you struggled to find the confidence you needed to stand up and do what was right? Because in this way, you're just like George Washington. George Washington initially struggles to find the confidence he needs to step up and take on this role as Commander-in-Chief of our Continental Army. He immediately writes a letter home to his wife Martha, and he calls the job a trust too great for my capacity. But George Washington also recognizes his duty to act. And the very next day, he stands up and he accepts his appointment as Commander-in-Chief, despite every danger and every uncertainty that comes with being the leader of a rebel army. But in his acceptance speech here to our Continental Congress, George Washington does remark, "I do not think myself equal to the command I am honored with." So George Washington leaves Philadelphia. He leaves our Continental Congress behind, and he marches north to Boston, Massachusetts, to take command of a group of farmers turned soldiers who have just stood up to the might of the British Army at the Battle of Bunker Hill. Now, for the rest of our Continental Congressmen seated here, even though they have created their army, even though they've named their commander-in-chief, these men are not yet ready to declare something as radical as American independence. So instead, they draft an olive branch petition. It's a peace petition to send across the Atlantic Ocean to King George III. They're hoping they can prevent any further bloodshed. But the petition fails. The king refuses to read it. He has already declared these colonies to be in a state of open and avowed rebellion. Now, the year 1775 very quickly turns into 1776, and it's the colony of Virginia that decides it's time to speed things up a little bit. So they instruct their delegates here at our Congress to propose American independence. It's Richard Henry Lee of Virginia who stands up before this Congress and declares, "Resolved, that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown. But still, this Congress just isn't ready for that vote on independence, so they delay the vote by a couple weeks. But in the meantime, they select a committee of 5 men to draft a written Declaration of Independence. One of these men is Thomas Jefferson. Over the next 2 weeks, 33-year-old Thomas Jefferson will draft a document that justifies why we're declaring independence from Great Britain when he writes, "When a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty, to throw off such government and provide new guards for their future security." Folks, what Thomas Jefferson is essentially saying here is that American colonists have recognized that there's something wrong with the system of government they are currently living under. So it's now their right, and it's now their duty, to create a new government that can better represent them and better protect their rights. Now our vote for independence. Our vote is finally scheduled for July 2nd, 1776. And our vote here needs to be unanimous, meaning yes from every one of these tables. But we've got a problem. One colony here is deadlocked. It doesn't know whether it wants to vote yes or no for independence. And it's actually one of our smallest colonies, little Delaware. Now Delaware's problem here is they have 3 delegates at our Congress. The first is Caesar Rodney, but he's currently back home in Delaware. So that leaves Thomas McKean, he's for independence, and George Reed, he's against independence. Delaware has found itself caught in a 1-to-1 tie. It cannot vote yes for independence. So Thomas McKean, he writes a letter home to Delaware to Caesar Rodney, urging him to do everything possible to make it back here to Philadelphia in time for this July 2nd vote. Caesar Rodney reads this letter, and he recognizes his duty to both Delaware and to our Continental Congress, and he sets off immediately. Now I'm sure that many of you are familiar with Paul Revere's famous midnight ride earlier in the war. But what about Caesar Rodney's not so famous midnight ride? Caesar Rodney rides 80 miles all through the night with this horrific thunderstorm to make it back here to Philadelphia in time for this vote. And he does all of this while he's very sick. He suffered from a few different illnesses at this time. So the strength of this man to make this ride was pretty remarkable. And Caesar Rodney makes it just in time. He comes bursting through these doors of Independence Hall. He's completely splattered in mud from that thunderstorm. He's still wearing his riding boots, but he's made it just in time. And on July 2nd, Delaware votes yes for independence. So folks, the next time we get change, I want you to look out for a Delaware state border. And you're going to see Caesar Rodney making that ride here to Philadelphia to vote yes for independence. Caesar Rodney is the only one of our 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence to be on the back of one of our state borders. So it is on July 2nd, 1776, everyone, that our Continental Congress declares American independence. It will then be 2 days later, on July 4th, that they will vote to adopt Thomas Jefferson's written Declaration of Independence. And the very first copies of the Declaration will be printed with that July 4th date, which is why we do celebrate the 4th of July as opposed to the 2nd as our Independence Day. But then it will be 1 month later, on August 2nd, 1776, that our delegates all gather right here in the Assembly Room. They are called up here to John Hancock's desk, one at a time, to finally place their signatures at the bottom of the Declaration of Independence, symbolizing an end to British authority over these colonies and the birth of a new sovereign nation, the United States. It will then be in the year 1787 that delegates will gather back here in our Assembly Room for a constitutional convention. They are now going to create a federal government for this brand new independent country. And George Washington will be called upon to serve as president of this constitutional convention. Now, George Washington will sit right up here in the rising sun chair. This rising sun chair is the one piece of furniture that is completely original to this assembly room. This is the exact chair that George Washington will sit in all throughout the summer of 1787, as our delegates here were arguing and debating and compromising and ultimately writing our United States Constitution. Now, Benjamin Franklin, he too is sitting right here in our assembly room all throughout the summer. And Ben keeps looking up here, not at George Washington, but at his rising sun chair. And Ben is absolutely fixated on that little sun there at the very top of the chair. And Benjamin Franklin keeps wondering, well, is this a rising sun or is it a setting sun? Well, by the end of the summer, in September of 1787, our Constitution is finally finished. And the delegates all gather here in our assembly room to place their signatures at the bottom of the document. It is then that Benjamin Franklin confidently declares, well, I now know it's not a setting sun. It is, in fact, a rising sun. Now, folks, I want to leave you all today by returning to that quote from Common Sense by Thomas Paine. We have it in our power to begin the world over again. Thomas Paine's words apply not just to the year 1776, but to the year 2022 as well. The delegates who sat right here in our assembly room, they saw something wrong and they changed it. So folks, where do you see something wrong in the world around you today? And how can you recognize your ability, your right, and your duty to act? Thank you all so much.
That was so interesting to listen to that woman talk about all that great history. And right here is the steps from National Treasure when he went up to the steeple. See, they should let us go up there. That'd be kind of cool. And that's it as we exit Independence Hall. Well worth the trip if you're in Philadelphia to come and check this out. This was so cool today. I like this side because there's no real high rises in it. You can really take in the beauty of the building and just how historic it looks. All right, friends, that will do it for us today. I had a great time today visiting the Independence Hall, getting to check out the Liberty Bell and everything in this area, downtown Philadelphia. Very historical, a lot of cool stuff to see and learn about, and I enjoyed it all, and I hope you did. So that is it. If you're new to the channel, please think about subscribing. If you like the content today, please give it a thumbs up. Until next time, friends, I am the Hitchhiking Yeti, and I will see you in the next video. Everyone, please stay safe. Until next time, so long.